high in the mountains of Colorado. There is a forgotten place, a place so silent, so abandoned, that most people don't even know exists anymore. The name of this town is Coldwater Springs. In the early 1900s, Coldwater Springs was a small mining settlement. Families lived here. Children played in the dusty streets. Men worked long hours in the dark tunnels below the mountains, digging for silver. On the surface, it looked like any other mining town of its time. But behind the laughter of children, behind the clinking of mining tools, something else was happening. Something that no one could explain. Miners would vanish in the tunnels. Entire shifts of men gone without a trace. At night, the families reported strange sounds, chains dragging across the wooden floors, whispers that came from empty rooms, and shadows moving where no person stood. At first, people thought it was just paranoia, stress from the dangerous work. But then, people started dying. One miner's body was found in the center of town, his face frozen in terror, his eyes wide open, as if he had seen something that should never be seen. Another man's wife was found in the river, her hands clawed as if she was trying to fight something off. The townspeople grew restless. Fear spread like wildfire. And then, in the middle of one brutal winter, Coldwater Springs was abandoned overnight. Families packed their belongings and vanished, leaving behind their homes, their possessions, and their secrets. For over 100 years, the town has remained untouched. Houses still stand, though they lean and rot. The mine entrance is sealed shut with rusted iron gates. But those who dare to visit claim that the spirits of Coldwater Springs are still here. Some say, when the wind blows to the mountains, you can still hear the screams of the miners echoing in the tunnels. Others swear they have seen children standing in the windows of the empty schoolhouse, watching, waiting. And tonight, we will take you there. This is not just another ghost story. This is the curse of Coldwater Springs. I couldn't stop thinking about that diary. The man who lived in this cabin before me wasn't crazy. He was terrified. And now, after what I saw in the window last night, I know I'm not alone out here. The next morning, I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside. Fresh snow covered the ground perfect and untouched. But then I saw them footprints. They circled my cabin, over and over, like something had been walking around all night watching me. I followed the tracks down the hill, toward the frozen lake. That's when I saw him, Steve, my only neighbor. He waved, but his eyes, they didn't look right. Cold, empty, like he knew something he wasn't telling me. I asked him about the man who owned this cabin before me. Steve's smile faded. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "He's dead, died in that very cabin you're living in." And then he told me something that froze my blood. No one ever found the man's wife. She vanished as if the forest swallowed her whole. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it, breathing. Not mine, not human. Something moving under my bed. When I turned on the light, nothing. But the smell, that sweet, rotten odor, it stayed. I thought about leaving, packing up, driving to town, never coming back. But I couldn't. Something about this mystery pulled me deeper. Like Coldwater Springs wasn't done with me yet. And that was my mistake. That night, I tried to distract myself. I turned on the TV, but instead of my usual satellite channels, the screen filled with static. At first, it was just white noise. But then, black lines began to crawl across the screen. And suddenly I saw it. It was my cabin. A live feed. I saw myself, sitting there, staring at the TV. I raised my hand, and the figure on the screen raised his hand too. That's when I noticed something else. Behind me in the reflection, a pale, twisted figure. Its spine bent the wrong way. Its black eyes hollow. Its long, broken fingers reaching toward me. I spun around, but nothing was there. Only silence. Only shadows. I smashed the TV, glass shattering across the floor. But deep inside, I knew the twisted man was real. He wasn't a hallucination. He wasn't just a story in the diary. He was here in my cabin, and he was watching me. I couldn't stay in that cabin anymore. The smell, the sounds, the shadows, they were driving me insane. So I made a choice. I packed my shotgun, put on layers of clothes, and rode my snowmobile through the freezing night to Steve's cabin. When I knocked on his door, he looked surprised. I told him I couldn't stay in my place anymore. Something was happening, something I couldn't explain. He let me in, half asleep, and pointed to the couch. "Get some rest," he muttered. But sleep was impossible. While Steve snored in the other room, I wandered around his cabin. That's when I saw it. A binder. Old, black, heavy. Inside were clippings of missing people. Dozens of them. Women, hikers, strangers who had vanished in the forest. And then the article about Will Lenning, the man who lived in my cabin before me. Next to the reporter's suicide, in red ink, Steve had written one word. The sound of a gun cocking behind me froze my blood. Steve's voice came, cold and calm. "Do you like my work, friend?" I turned slowly. His eyes weren't the eyes of a neighbor anymore. They were the eyes of a killer. He smiled. "Yes, Will is dead. His wife too, and many more before them. But you," he raised a gun at me, "you weren't supposed to find out yet." Before he could pull the trigger, I saw a movement behind him. The twisted man, that pale, broken figure with black eyes, standing in the shadows. Steve screamed. The creature's long fingers brushed across his neck. Steve fired wildly, bullets tearing into the walls. I grabbed my shotgun and pulled the trigger. Steve's body hit the floor. Silent. Still. I looked up. The twisted man was watching me, grinning, not attacking, not killing, just watching. And that's when I realized the truth. The creature wasn't hunting me. It was protecting me. It had been trying to warn me all along. But the worst part? I had killed the only man who knew how many others had gone missing in these woods. And now the twisted man was the only one left who knew the full story. The cabin was silent after Steve's death. Only the fire crackled in the fireplace, throwing shadows across the walls. But I wasn't alone. The twisted man was still there, watching. I tried not to look at him, but every time my eyes moved, he was closer. 1 second across the room. The next, standing in the corner, silent, still. I shouted, "What do you want from me?" But the only answer was the sound of the wind outside, howling through the cracks in the cabin walls. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed Steve's binder, his gun, and ran out into the snow. The storm was raging. Snow whipped against my face, blinding me, but I kept running through the forest, down toward the old mines beneath Coldwater Springs. The diary had mentioned them, the place where it all began. The entrance was half buried under ice. Rusty boards blocked the tunnel, but I forced my way inside. The air was damp, heavy, filled with the smell of rot. My flashlight flickered against the stone walls. That's when I heard it, a whisper, not just one, but hundreds. Voices, echoing from the darkness. As I walked deeper, I saw carvings scratched into the stone. Symbols, circles, figures bent backwards, the same shape as the twisted man. At the end of the tunnel, I found a massive cavern, and in the center, bones, piles of them, dozens, maybe hundreds, some fresh, some decades old. I dropped the flashlight, and it rolled across the floor, illuminating something standing on the far side. The twisted man. But he wasn't alone. Dozens of them pale, broken figures crawling out of the shadows. Their eyes glowed in the dark, and they were all whispering one word: stay. I realized then what Coldwater Springs really was. Not a town, not just a ghost story. It was a feeding ground. The mines, the cabins, the missing people, all part of the curse. The twisted man stepped forward, his face inches from mine, and for the first time he spoke. His voice was dry, hollow, like wind through dead trees. "You're one of us now." My body froze. My skin felt cold, stretching, bending. My spine twisted, bones cracking one by one. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing I remember is a fire in my chest going out, and the sound of dozens of voices whispering together. Now I sit here in the dark, waiting, watching, and if you ever visit Coldwater Springs, you'll see me too.